It's my privilege to share a word with you this morning. So when Pastors Josh and Rose said, hey, we're doing a series, I always get excited every time, but this time they said it's one where you just get to take a parable and do whatever you want with it. And I almost fell out of my seat because that's like my favorite thing ever. The parables are my favorite part of the entire Bible, if you didn't know that. And so I love the parables. I think of parables like they're kind of like art. Some people, they can just read, it takes 5 seconds, read past it. But for me, those people, they go to an art museum and they look at one painting for an hour. That's how I am with the parables. So I can look at the parables and I can sort of chew on them and meditate for hours and hours and hours. And I hope that there is something to learn from a parable that we're talking about this morning. And so I almost just want to start off with that. There is an appreciation for the parables when you start to understand that these are stories that are crafted from the mind of God, right? It wasn't like this was just some random thing that happened and then Jesus was like, well, I would have said it differently, but I guess I'll use it to make a point. No. This comes straight from the mind of God, trying to say it in a way that makes sense to humanity, right? Because I could give you 12 points and maybe you could write them down, but the best way to remember something is when you make it sort of flow like a story. And Jesus, in his immense wisdom, he knew that, and so he told stories that maybe to some confused, but for others, it's like that was divine revelation to me, because that makes so much sense to me, okay? So I'm going to start with a story for you guys. It's of me when I was in 8th grade. This is what I looked like in 8th grade. I know what you're thinking. That kid could probably beat me up. No, I never got into a fight. I was a little bit nerdy, Okay, I didn't just wear ties to school. Okay, we had to wear ties. I went to a private Christian school, and this was on chapel day. Okay, so I wasn't that weird, but okay. This was me in 8th grade. I was a good student. When you took really long exams that were like 2 hours long, and there was one kid that finished at like minute 37, and he made it really obvious that he finished, and he raised his hand, and everyone thinks he's asking a question, but he's like, what do I do when I'm done? And you get really angry at it. Yeah, that was me. That was me. And I can't lie, I was kind of proud of it. I was like, yeah, I get to have an extra hour of my life back. But so yeah, I wasn't necessarily liked, and I didn't realize it. My wife actually, she went to high school with me, so she told me after the fact, she was like, yeah, people thought this of you. And I was like, makes sense, deserved. Okay, but I was a good student, and so I didn't get into trouble much, but I went to the principal's office one time in my entire schooling career, and I'm going to tell you the story of that one time, okay? So basically what happened was I was in history class in the 8th grade, and it was a small class, and at the beginning of every single class, we started with a quiz. It was a 10-question quiz, and we would sort of fill it out really quickly, and this was the teacher's first chance to go to the bathroom all day, so she would always go to the bathroom during the quiz. And so one day I was about to take my quiz, and then my friend behind me, I noticed he didn't have his, so I was like, no worries, here you go, bro. I ran up to the podium, I grabbed another quiz, and then I go to fill it out, but I realized it's not a blank quiz, it's the answer key. And then I'm like, oh, this is interesting. My first inclination is to just take it back, but then something little in me was like, let me show my friend. So I showed my friend, and then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna take it back though. And he's like, no, put it down and let's copy off of it. And I had a chance to not do it, but I did it too. And then there was a girl next to us who overheard, and so she starts copying. And before I knew it, the entire class had copied off of the answer key. And we thought we got away with it. We went back, we put the answer key like how we thought it was. We turned all our quizzes in. Teacher came back, didn't notice. We're like, we did it, okay? But after lunch, I heard over the announcement, Ashton Pope, please come to the principal's office. And it was my friend as well. I didn't realize, I wasn't smart enough to realize that when an entire class gets an 100, when you haven't even gotten close to all getting an 100 all semester, that's a surefire tell that there was cheating. And so I'm in the principal's office with me and my friend, and the principal is, he's given a lot of I just can't believe you would show such bad character. I thought you were young men that, knew what it meant to resemble Christ. Because again, I went to a Christian school, and I was like, you're right. But my friend, he was someone who went to the principal's office all the time. So he had his arms crossed. And he was like, I don't care, like, I'm that guy, whatever. The history teacher was next to us. She walks over and bends over my friend and starts really, like, ripping into him, okay? And I'm just sitting, I'm like, you deserve it, I deserve it, like, all that. And then out of nowhere, he slaps her in the face. Full slap. And then I was like, bro, okay, I'm a criminal now. I'm about to get expelled. This is terrible. It ended up, my friend, he got suspended. I just had to go to detention, I think like once or twice. But I walked out of that office and I was feeling so bad about myself. I was like, I messed up. It was the first time I'd ever done anything like that, and I was so guilty. And I'm walking out and I'm walking to the parking lot, and this guy that was definitely like cooler than me, he comes up to me, he taps me, he daps me up. He's like, respect, man, I heard what you did. And I didn't really think about it. I was just like, yeah, I know. And then this girl came up that was in the class, and she was like, I just didn't know how you thought on the fly so quickly. And I was like, yeah, wait, what'd you say? I thought on the fly. Like, it's crazy because it's a memory where I remember the feeling of feeling so disappointed in myself and bad, and yet I also remember the pride of being like, cool people started looking at me and being like, you're cool now. And I started getting like almost this like positive feeling to it as well. And so I start with that to say, have you ever experienced something where you did something bad, or maybe you saw something bad and yet there was a good result off the back of it? I kind of think of it like, do you guys watch movies and sometimes you like the bad guy better than the good guy? Because the bad guy, he actually is cool, and the good guy is like, I don't want that guy to win. I kind of like the bad guy. You know what I mean? So basically, we're going to be talking about a story today, which it's a parable. I think it's the most overlooked and confused parable in the entire Bible. Because a bad guy does a bad thing, and yet he gets praised. A good thing comes off the back of it. And I actually had a friend one time, we were talking about this parable, and she said, yeah, when that one comes up, I just skip over it because I don't even want to like think about it. It's so confusing. So are you guys excited? We're going to talk about that parable, okay? It's called the parable of the dishonest manager, or the parable of the shrewd manager, okay? I'm going to read off of this screen right here. Let's pull it up. Luke 16, 1-9. Jesus told his disciples there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer. The manager said to himself, what shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses. So he called in each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, how much do you owe my master? 900 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 450. Then he asked the second, and how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. He told him, take your bill and make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Okay, so I'm going to try to translate this quick if this went over someone's head, okay? 2026 language. There's a dude, and he's the wealth manager of a really rich guy. Okay, that means he has access to all of his wealth. And then he basically embezzles money all the time. So it doesn't mean that he's not a good manager. Like maybe he makes the guy money, but he freely takes money away and spends it on whatever he wants. Maybe he has a bigger house than his salary afforded. Maybe he goes to Vegas, twice a year and he wastes money, right? He's embezzling money and he's using it for pleasures of life, for whatever he wants. And the master finds out about that and says, okay, you're fired. But because you're so integrated into everything, like you need to get your accounts in order, basically. It's kind of like what we would think of as like a 2-week notice. So you got some kind of period of time. And the guy immediately thinks, okay, I've got 2 weeks. I need to secure my future because I'm about to get fired. I'm going to be thrown on the street. And he's like, well, I'm not a manual labor guy, and I'm too ashamed to beg. So I'm going to use my smarts to secure my future. And he's really comfortable with wasting the master's money at this point, right? And up to this point, he's been wasting the master's money on himself, but he has a genius idea. He says, I'm going to waste the master's money for someone else, and that's going to secure my future. So he takes someone who owes money, who has an official sort of slip, whatever it is at that point, and he changes it. And I would just say this, there's only two people that would have the authority to change an official document. It's the master and it's the manager who he's given all authority over. So he changes the slip and he says, you did owe this much, now you owe this much, wasting that much of the master's money. And then he does it for another person as well. And then you're thinking, I've heard parables before. I've heard where they contrast bad people for good people. You know, they're talking, and it's like, whenever a bad person comes up, you're like, they're going to be thrown where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Or they're going to be bundled up and they're going to be thrown in the fire. You're like, this guy's about to go weeping and gnashing of teeth, right? But it says the master commended the manager. It's like he tipped his hat and he was like, that rascal got me. That was impressive. And this is why it's so confusing, right? Is we're expecting, this guy's evil. He did something terrible. He wasted money. And yet Jesus, again, coming back to what parables are, this is coming straight from the mind of Jesus. So my question is, why is this in the Bible? Why did Jesus think this was important enough to say this? And why did the master commend the manager? That's what we're trying to answer today. Find the revelation within this parable, okay? Okay, so what I think is that what Jesus is trying to do is he's trying to isolate the good part of this manager. So I have a couple things on the screen right here. These are the good qualities that I came up with for the manager. I'm sure you could come up with a longer list, right? But he was determined. He had urgency. He was self-aware, right? He was unwilling to, do the lesser things. He was unwilling to do manual labor. He was a visionary. He had a plan, and he immediately executed it. He didn't know it was going to work. He just was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure it out, and it's going to secure my future. I'm going to go. He refused to settle for a lesser life. He was clever. He was a genius. He knew how to use money to his own advantage. He took care of others. Now, again, it was ultimately for himself. It's kind of like a sales tactic. You think the customer thinks it's all about them, but really it was about him. But he did take care of them. That was his last move. And then finally, he was resourceful. He knew how to use what was within his realm for himself. And so I think if you take all of those good qualities and you isolate it away from the bad character, which is obvious in him, what that is one word, and it's shrewd. That word is shrewd. And I think because shrewd sounds like a nasty word, right? It sounds like, oh, he's shrewd, You kind of picture someone like hunched over, snarling, and like, I'm going to take your money. But that's not what shrewd actually means. I think it just sounds nasty, right? In English, it sounds nasty. That's not what it actually means. Dishonest manager, yeah, that's bad. Shrewd manager, it's actually a good thing. Okay, this is what shrewd actually means. Here's the word in the Greek. It's phronimos. Say phronimos. Phronimos. I really like Greek names. I was imagining, like, would my wife let me name a kid Phronimos? Little fro? No, she won't. This is what it actually means. The word in the Greek, phronimos, this is the definition. Wise, sharp, practical intelligence, sound judgment. That is exactly what it means, okay? And do you guys remember last week when Pastor Rose preached? She preached about a different parable. It was the wise builder who builds his house on the rock and the foolish builder who builds his house on the sand. And that rock is Jesus, our firm foundation. Let me pull up that passage real quick. Matthew 7:24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. Guess what that word is for wise? Phronimos. Okay? So when Rose was talking about a man who built his house on the rock, Jesus, he's a wise man. He did the right thing. That is the exact same word when we say the shrewd manager, we're saying the phronimos manager. That's the exact same word. So shrewd actually is a good thing, and he's complimenting this manager. So what is that good thing? Why would he say that about a bad man unless he wants us to sort of look at that and be like, okay, we need some of that. So I think it makes it more clear whenever we look at it in the KJV. So this is the main verse in the KJV of the shrewd manager passage. And the Lord commended the unjust steward because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. This is the KJV. This is exactly how it says. The children of this world, they're wiser than the children of light. And so I can't interpret that any other way other than this. Regarding money, the world is shrewder than the church, right? It's specific to money. I know, obviously, if the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and the world doesn't fear the Lord, they're not wiser than us, okay? But what it's talking about is it's talking about shrewdness, and it's saying the world is shrewder than us. They're better than us. Why would Jesus think it's important enough to say that if he didn't want to make a point, which is like, that's not a good thing, right? So what I think, and my challenge is the church should be the shrewdest. The church should be the shrewdest place. And we need to stop hearing shrewd, like almost, you need to rewire your mind. Shrewd, it sounds nasty. You need to start hearing it like, oh, it's a good thing. I want to be shrewd. It's a challenge. That's the whole point of this passage. Why does shrewdness only get attached to people with bad character? I think the reason why the parable makes so much sense to us is because we can imagine someone who embezzles money, and we can imagine someone who's really smart with the stocks, and we always think that's a bad man. But why does it have to be a bad man? It doesn't have to be a bad man. I think if we started taking more seriously shrewdness in the church and realized this parable was saying, hey, this is an opportunity for us. We can be shrewd as well. And so I think this is the two reasons why we are not shrewd in the church, okay? I put it into two buckets of an unshrewd church. I think we sort of get comfortable in these two buckets, okay? The first one is a bucket where someone says, I have wisdom, and that's how I operate the way that I am. And I'm gonna stereotype us for a second, but you guys are tough, so you can take it, okay? The wisdom bucket is generally people that are wiser in years, okay? Generally people that have built up more wealth over the course of their life. And they've gotten to a point where maybe they genuinely are very wise. They genuinely are wise with their money. But it goes so far that they leave no room for faith, and so what I would call that is fear. That is when you take it too far. You're no longer being wise with your money, and you're actually just afraid of losing it, right? The other bucket, and now I'm stereotyping the other side, more younger in years, the faith bucket, and I'm speaking to Freedom Church because I know this is a lot of us, right? Maybe we haven't built as much wealth up in our lives, but it's actually, we use that as an excuse to not have to take responsibility for wisdom, right? And so we're actually acting unwise. We call it faith. We're saying like, oh, I'm using my faith. I'm willing to do anything. But it's like, but you didn't show up for that interview that you had yesterday. But you're like, oh, it's okay. God will take care of it. And it's like, God will take care of it. But maybe God gave you that interview and you were supposed to show up and be responsible for once, right? So I think these two buckets are sort of the way. And again, I know there's some people that don't fall into these buckets, but I think these are the two buckets where we almost get comfortable. One side, we get comfortable with kind of having a goose egg of money, and our comfort is actually in the money, not in God taking care of us. And the other side is a comfort in not taking responsibility, because having more money means more responsibility, and that maybe scares some of us. And so here's my challenge to both sides. First one is being wise with money doesn't excuse you from taking faith risks. This is to the wisdom bucket. Being wise with money doesn't excuse you from taking faith risks. Having a large bank account doesn't excuse you from taking faith risks. Being at maybe the end of your days doesn't mean that you shouldn't take risks anymore that maybe you would have taken when you were 20, because we need to have the same faith. Our faith needs to actually be growing across the course of our life, believing for impossible things, right? And to the faith bucket, having the faith to take risks with money doesn't excuse you from the call to wisdom. So this is my challenge to you more younger guys in the church, my younger group, is just because we have ridiculous faith, incredible faith, we believe for the impossible, and I love our church because of this, it doesn't discount the fact that we have to have wisdom with our lives, with the way that we manage money. And so I have this graph. I know I'm a nerdy guy. I did history class earlier. This is math class. On the x-axis, you have wisdom, and on the y-axis, is this bringing back stuff? On the y-axis, you've got faith, right? if you're in the bottom left, that means you have low wisdom and low faith. That's very not good, okay? I think some of us, we've got a lot of faith, but not a lot of wisdom, so we're in that top left. Maybe some of us, we've got a lot of wisdom, but not a lot of faith, so we're in that bottom right. But I hope for our church, no matter what your career, no matter what you're doing, that we would all be somewhere in the realm of the top right, where we have the combination of both faith and wisdom, and we're inspired to use our money for bigger things. And I think that sometimes we actually view sort of a call with money or something involving money as like negative. And I think we're actually missing the fact that there's people all across the Bible that had careers, that had skills, and they used it powerfully for ministry. And that's a great call on your life. So look at this. This is in the same book, Luke 8. Along with some women who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases, among them were Mary Magdalene, from whom had cast out 7 demons, Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's business manager, Susanna, and many others who were contributing from their own resources to support Jesus and his disciples. So if you don't think that we as Freedom Church need the support of some shrewd people, and sort of we need shrewdness united, Jesus himself needed shrewd people. He had 3 self-employed women or business-savvy women that were supporting his ministry, right? And if you look at this chart, this is what I see shrewdness in the Bible. Jesus was a self-employed carpenter, okay? He didn't start his ministry till he was 30. That means he probably started working with his father as a young teenager, which means he probably had about a 2-decade career of being a carpenter. Jesus' supporters, like we were just talking about, business-savvy women, that's just what we know of as 3 of them, but it said there was others as well. So there was all kinds of entrepreneurs, self-employed people that were supporting the ministry. Paul was a self-employed tent maker, and he says over and over in the epistles, I didn't ask anyone for anything because I supported myself with tent making. Joseph was the CEO of Egypt. I say it like that because CEO means Chief Execution Officer. It's the highest level employee in a business that acts on behalf of the owner and does everything that the owner wants. And that's exactly what Joseph was. It says he was the second in command in all of Egypt, but he operated as Pharaoh. He had all the powers of Pharaoh. He was the CEO of Egypt, and he got there because he was a hard worker and because of the favor of God. And then Proverbs 31, I don't know if you guys have ever read Proverbs 31, the epitome of what a woman is apparently, but it talks about her as a business manager, as a wealth manager of her family. She buys and she sells lands for the family, and the husband trusts her to do that. And so I'm not saying that's what everyone has to do. I'm not saying everyone needs to be self-employed exactly like this. What I'm trying to make is the point that actually money, making money, career, those kinds of things, that's not a lesser life. That's actually can be something that God can use in a powerful way in your life. And so I want to know, where are these people in our church? These titles. Where are these in our church? Where are the people that are young? I see some young people in the room. Where are the people that are saying, I want to be a CEO one day? And that isn't looked at as something that's like, oh, that's a lesser call than someone who wants to be a pastor or someone who wants to be a missionary. Because CEO could be your ministry, right? And so I just say, I guess first off, if you're one of these, or if you're business savvy, if you're shrewd and you're in the room, then I want to meet you because I haven't met you yet. And I would say there in some way, either you're not connected into the life of our church to the way that you should be, or maybe it's on me and I haven't gotten to meet you yet, but I want to meet you. Not because I want to take advantage of sort of what you have, but I want you to teach our church how to be business savvy. I want you to teach our young people how you got where you got and how we can manage our money better. We need you to disciple us and teach us how to do stuff like that. But again, to the young people I want young people to start getting a vision for, I love Jesus with absolutely everything that I have, and I think he's calling me to be a real estate investor. And maybe that's not the only thing you ever do, but it's like, I have a vision for, I want to take money and I want to use it in a shrewd way. But I guess we have to ask the question, like, why is it so important for us to have people that are CEOs, real estate investors, whatever it is, right? When I think of money, we always talk about it as it's associated with power, right? And so oftentimes I think when we look at these titles, we think of a bad man, or we think of someone who's taking the money and they're using it for something in the world. And I would say that's true. So every time a Christian doesn't think that they're worthy to go after this or thinks that this is a bad calling, that power goes to someone who doesn't serve Jesus, right? And again, God can use anything for his mission, but I almost want us to get a vision for like, if we had a Christian that was the CEO of McDonald's and he was in our church, even if he didn't do crazy things on social media and just post about freedom, atomic things as being the CEO of McDonald's could make a crazy impact in our church, right? And so it's almost like, why is this so powerful? It's because of what you can do with money. And you can serve God with it, right? But this last verse, I think it really makes it clear what the true why of it is. Luke 16:9, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. I'll say it like this. Money is a temporary tool that can be used to mine real treasure. That's why money is so valuable to us as the church. It's not because we want money for our own purposes. Money by itself is nothing to me. But when I start seeing it like it's actually a tool, I kind of think of it, the more money I have a bigger tool. I can excavate more, I can find more gold, right? And so then we ask, what is the real treasure? That's what it said in the verse. Make friends for yourself so you can be received into eternal dwellings. We can use this money. I've got this little pouch of money in my pocket. We can use this to impact people. What is this in comparison to a person? Some people, they want this instead of friends. They want this instead of caring for people. If we say that we're a church that love people with everything, then we should want more of this, not for ourselves, but because it's how we make an impact on this world. And so, I don't know if you know this, but I'm not a full-time pastor. I actually work at a tech company called FlexGen. I'm a software sales engineer, so I sell large-scale battery storage every day, and I love it. I love my job. But in comparison to the church, it's nothing, right? And I do love my job, but the real thing when my job is hard that inspires me to show up the next day is I see money as a tool. And so I want to grow my career because I think on the end of it, it's like if I had more of this, then it turns into more people. It turns into more generosity, that I can care for people, that I can open up my home for it. And so that's how I view money every single time it comes into my hands. It excites me because like, man, that's an opportunity for more generosity. I'm going to tell you a story real quick of how I used my money one time, okay? So I was at a party and like 2.5 years ago, and I was eavesdropping a little bit, and I was hearing about this girl who I had never really met, but it kind of sounded like she hadn't fully understood like what our church was about, and I didn't think that was her fault. I thought that was on people like me. Like I think I didn't make that clear, or I hadn't connected with her, and so it hurt me, and so I started having a conversation with her, and it went really well, and then I was like, okay, I want to have her over for dinner with me and my wife. And so we actually had her over for dinner the next night. And there was a dollar value associated with that dinner. I cooked for her. Obviously, it took time. I don't know how much money it was. I didn't think twice about it. But it took some of this, right? And that woman's name is Isabella, if you know Isabella in our church. She just did academy. She just completed academy. And I mean, my participation in her journey is so minimal, right? But I do believe, in all honesty, there was almost a hinge point that required this, right? And so I used a little bit of this, had her over for dinner with me and my wife. It was awesome. And then by the end of it, she decided she wanted to join our small group. And that was awesome. We were like, awesome, yeah, we'll have you at our small group. A couple weeks later, we had a small group social with Will's group, and it was at Will's house. Again, it had a dollar value associated with this. Out of generosity of me and Will, we bought burgers and hot dogs and whatnot. Will's a really good cook. And we cooked for about 30 people. Isabella came because she was now in our small group, and she brought a guy named Gabriel. And she had met Gabriel at a conference. I don't know, like that week or the week before. And so then I connected with Gabriel, and I thought, I like this guy. I want to connect with him. I want to have him over for dinner. So I had him over for dinner. And again, I don't know what the dollar value was to that, but I didn't even think twice about it. He was a stranger to me, and yet for some reason, I wanted to pay money to care for him. And so then at dinner, we connected. I thought, this is a cool young man. I want to invest in him. I want to be a part with him. And, we kind of connected in a way that was really awesome. And so I don't know how many dinners we ended up having. I don't know how much money I've spent on him. Again, I haven't thought twice about it, right? But then he had me over for dinner one time, and he said, I'm in love with your sister. And then they got married a month ago. And so I'm almost like, what is the dollar value that's worth it to have a brother-in-law? How much of this, if someone would have told me beforehand, if you could pay this much, if you had all the money in the world, how much would you pay for your brother-in-law? Is there a dollar value on it? There isn't. And yet for me, it only, I got it for a steal. I was cooking him cheap meals. And now my sister's married to the love of his life, something I prayed for my whole life. And so I'm almost saying that to be like, what if you started to believe that money is a tool that can be used to mine real treasure? And more money can mean more Isabellas and more Gabriels and more marriages. And if we start to believe in that, then we could be a whole church of I want people to be CEOs. I want people to be real estate investors, because I want to take that and I want to use it for God's purposes. So what is a person worth? What is a person worth ultimately? What is their eternity worth? Right? Because it's even when people come into the church, they give their life to Jesus, they're not just having a good rest of the 70 years of their life. We're talking about eternity. And that's how that verse ends. Eternal dwellings. You're making for yourself an eternal brother or sister. There is not a dollar value in this world to me that is less than that. More than that. To me, if I can use money to make eternal friends, I'm gonna do that every single time. I never wanna be limited by how much I have, because I just constantly wanna be impacting people, loving people, caring for people. And so this is how I'll end. The Bible, it says the love of money is the root of all evil. But I'll say the love of people is the right root of money. Because I think that we have a church culture in America where we view the desire for money as a negative thing. But actually, if your desire for money is centered around your love for Jesus and the love for people, then I think that's the exact right reason to want more money. And I want that power to come into the church. I don't want it to go into the hands of people that are just gonna waste it on yachts and waste it on sexual things or drugs or alcohol. I want that in the church with people that are gonna change people's lives and are gonna be able to have ministry happen through the work of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, I'm sorry to, if this was your first time coming to our church, don't judge this church just by this message and by this morning, obviously what Bryce was saying. This message was very directed to Christians, honestly. And if it's your first time ever coming, and maybe if you don't know Jesus, I want to speak to you for a moment, which is that this is all about Jesus. It really is. The reason why I get fired up about people being shrewd with money is because of Jesus. That's the central point of who I am. And so I want to speak to you. If you don't know the Lord Jesus in this room, I want to talk about him for a second, okay? Because we were talking about this price of people, right? Jesus, the Son of God, he actually gave himself at a price. And this is what the price was if you look in Matthew 26. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. So Jesus, the Son of God, was given up for 30 pieces of silver. And this is a replica Roman silver coin. This is the exact weight and consistency of the coin that Jesus was sold for. And within this bag is 30 of those. So this This is the price that Jesus was sold for, the Son of God. Judas Iscariot looked at this and he thought, I want this more than the Savior of the world. And so when we talk about what is a person worth, and we're saying it's infinite, well then I'll ask you, what is the Son of God worth? Because Judas said he was worth 30 pieces of silver. But ultimately, eternity will be decided, your eternity will be decided on how much you think Jesus is worth. Is he the Son of God, or is he worth the price of a slave? And so if there's anything moving in your spirit right now that says Jesus is the one true way, he's the Son of God, I believe that he was crucified and he raised from the dead, then I want to give you an opportunity to give your life to Jesus right now.
Hi, I'm Pastor Josh Schnauzer at Freedom Church, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us and watching online. We're so glad to have you. I want to ask three things of you actually. First of all, is that if you live in the Raleigh area, come and join us in person. We'd love to have you come worship with us and come and sit in and be a part of Millbrook High School in one of our services. Second of all, that you pray with us. Pray that God would use this ministry to impact even more people. And third, if you're able to sow in and partner with us financially, we'd love for you to go to churchinraleigh.com and you can give there.